Sri Lanka is home to over 30,000 ancient reservoirs, some more than 2,000 years old. An island where kings did not just rule by power, but by how they tamed water. This is the story of a hydraulic civilization, where tanks, canals, stone, and soul came together to turn water into life. From the earliest kings to the forgotten engineers, from sacred rivers to tanks still in use today, this is the legacy of the Sinhalese irrigation genius. Sri Lanka receives generous rainfall, but only during a few months of the year. The ancient kingdoms of Rajaratha, Ruhuna, and Malayarata faced a challenge. How do you sustain life and agriculture through the long dry seasons? Unlike other ancient civilizations that blocked rivers with massive dams, the Sinhalese did something different. They listened to the land. Instead of obstructing rivers, they diverted and stored rainwater, gently, using canals, natural catchments, and cascading tanks. This system was sustainable, self-regulating, and deeply rooted in harmony with nature. The result was a complex, island-wide network of water storage and distribution, a system that turned water into a national treasure. The first stories of irrigation in Lanka begin with kings, not just from legend, but from remembered history. There were Rakshasas, an ancient Hellic clan who tamed rivers and made the land bloom with tanks, canals, and wisdom drawn from the earth itself. Among them, Kumbhakarna, brother of King Ravana, stands as a guardian of balance, not only a warrior, but a teacher of land and water. In the memory of the island, he helped the Rakshasas channel floods, shape streams, and store rain. One river still bears his name, Kumbhakarna. It's said that he calmed its flow, carved its course, and taught the earliest people how to make the earth blossom. This is not just a tale of long ago. It is the beginning of a way of life, where engineering was sacred and water was life. Throughout this story, you'll hear the word Wewa. In English, it's often translated as tank or reservoir, but in Sri Lanka, a Wewa is something more. It is a lifeline, a sacred space, a work of engineering, and a work of devotion. Built by kings, cared for by communities, passed down through generations. A Wewa is where water rests, and where civilization begins. This was the beginning of the hydraulic legacy of the Sinhalese people, the Halese, whose ancient worldview saw water not just as a resource, but as a sacred trust. It began over 2,300 years ago in the sacred city of Anuradhapura. King Pandukabhaya, a visionary ruler, built the first great reservoirs, Abhaya Wewa, Nuwara Wewa, and Tisa Wewa. These tanks were dug by hand, lined with stone, and positioned with a precise understanding of elevation and rainfall. The Mahavamsa, Sri Lanka's ancient chronicle, records irrigation as a royal duty, a mark of a righteous king. Over the centuries, Sri Lankan kings expanded this system across the island's dry zone. King Vasabha built 11 large tanks and 12 canals in the 1st century CE. By the 3rd century, King Mahasen had earned the title Mineri Devio, the god of Mineria, after constructing the mighty Mineria tank and 16 other reservoirs. By the height of this civilization, Sri Lanka had built over 30,000 Wewa, reservoirs of all sizes, spread across the dry zone. Some were royal undertakings like Kala Wewa and Mineria, others were humble village tanks, carefully maintained by local communities. Together, they formed one of the most comprehensive water management systems in the ancient world. In the 5th century CE, King Dhatusena created one of the greatest hydraulic feats in Sri Lanka's history, Kala Wewa, a reservoir so vast it seemed like a sea. But his vision didn't end there. He connected Kala Wewa to the sacred city of Anuradhapura through a canal nearly 87 kilometers long, a masterpiece known as Yodha or Jayaganga. Among the marvels of ancient Lankan irrigation, Yodha stands out for its sheer precision and scale. It maintained a gradient of just 1 foot per 1.6 kilometers, or roughly 6 inches per mile, an engineering achievement still admired by modern experts. Built entirely without modern instruments, Yodha brought water to thousands of hectares of farmland. It transformed dry plains into fertile fields and sustained Anuradhapura, the island's sacred capital, for centuries. Even today, the canal still flows, not as a relic, but as a living legacy. Modern engineers have studied Yodha with awe, recognizing it as one of the most accurate gravity-fed canals ever built in the pre-modern world. It stands as proof that ancient Lankan engineers were masters of topography, hydrology, and sustainability. It was the 1980s. As engineers prepared to build the Maduru Oya Reservoir, part of a modern irrigation revival, something unexpected happened. Beneath layers of earth, they uncovered a massive ancient sluice gate, Sarawa, hidden for centuries beneath the soil. Measuring over 219 feet in length and 30 feet wide, the structure had twin inlet conduits, enclosed in a precision-built corbelled arch, a technique rarely seen even in the modern world. One wall bore intricate terracotta artwork of dancers, offering not just utility but beauty. Carbon dating revealed it to be over 2,000 years old, possibly from the 1st century BCE. A moment of awe. While modern engineers were trying to bring water to the people, they found that their ancient ancestors had already done it in the same place. The Maduru Oya Sluice reminds us, these are not ruins of a forgotten past. They are blueprints of resilience, still whispering to those who listen. In the heart of ancient Sri Lanka, vast reservoirs, called wewas, stretched across the dry plains like inland seas. But they weren't just large. They were brilliantly engineered. Hidden within these tanks was one of the world's earliest pressure-regulating innovations, the Bisokotuwa, meaning Queen's Enclosure. The Bisokotuwa is a box-like stone chamber built at the point where water exits the tank. But it wasn't decorative. Its function was revolutionary. It worked as an ancient pressure regulator. Without it, the force of water from massive tanks could erode canals and floodfields. But with it, the flow was tamed, controlled, gentle, and precise. British engineer Henry Parker, writing in 1909, compared the Bisokotuwa to the valve pits of modern Europe. He wrote, "Such also was the function of the Bisokotuwa of the Sinhalese engineers. They were the first inventors of the valve pit, more than 2,100 years ago. Ancient Ceylon, thanks to the Bisokotuwa, ancient Sri Lankan engineers mastered the art of hydraulic control long before modern valve pits existed." The Bisokotuwa is more than stone and water. It is a symbol of a civilization's wisdom, still irrigating our fields and still inspiring the world. Beyond individual tanks, the ancients built Ellangawa, cascades of interconnected reservoirs arranged along natural slopes. One tank overflowed into the next, filtering silt, purifying water, and ensuring that every drop was reused multiple times. These systems not only served agriculture, but also maintained biodiversity, cooled the local climate, and supported fish, birds, and other life forms. Irrigation in ancient Sri Lanka was deeply intertwined with Buddhist philosophy. Monasteries like Mihintale and Rittigala maintained their own tanks and microsystems, designed with the same principles of harmony, balance, and sustainability. For ancient Lankans, water was not just a physical resource, it was spiritual. It symbolized purity, life, and the accumulation of merit. In the 12th century, King Parakramabahu the Great declared, "Let not even a drop of rainwater fall into the ocean without being used for the benefit of mankind." He built the enormous Parakrama Samudraya in Polonnaruwa, a reservoir so vast it was called a Sea of Kings. It irrigated over 18,000 hectares and remains in use today. The brilliance of ancient Sri Lanka's hydraulic engineering didn't go unnoticed across the seas. In the 12th century Sanskrit chronicle Rajatarangini, historian Kalhana recounts an extraordinary tale, how the king of Kashmir sent an envoy all the way to Lanka, seeking help for a massive construction project. The king's request? To bring 5 Rakshasas, legendary engineers of great strength and rare wisdom, known for taming water and shaping the land. According to the story, the Lankan king, identified as Vibhisana, agreed to send 5 of his finest men to Kashmir. They were described as experts in hydraulic works, called Rakshasas, a term which, in the Lankan context, symbolized a noble and skilled clan, not demons. They helped construct a deep tank and a fortified city called Jayapura, described as a place of such beauty that it was said to be equal to heaven itself. The engineers of Lanka were so highly regarded that their legacy crossed mountains, kingdoms, and centuries, becoming part of legend. This remarkable account shows that Lankan irrigation mastery was not only admired at home, but also respected across the subcontinent, even in the Himalayan valleys of Kashmir. After the fall of the Polonnaruwa kingdom, Sri Lanka's irrigation system entered a long period of decline. Centuries of invasions, shifting capitals, and neglect allowed many reservoirs to be swallowed by jungle. In the 19th century, the British colonial government began restoring some of these ancient tanks, but much of the original knowledge had already been lost. Though modern Sri Lanka inherits this wisdom, it was the Sinhalese civilization that first shaped this landscape, with reservoirs, canals, and cascading systems that worked in harmony with nature. Today, Sri Lanka's irrigation heritage is gaining renewed recognition. Modern engineers are studying ancient techniques to design sustainable water systems for the future. Many tanks, like Kala Wewa and Tissa Wewa, remain in active use, quietly nourishing the land as they have for centuries. These are not ruins. They are living monuments, proof that ancient wisdom still holds value in the modern world. Organizations like UNESCO and global water management experts now study Sri Lanka's ancient systems as models of ecological balance, community stewardship, and hydraulic precision. The revival is not just physical, it is philosophical. A return to a way of thinking where water was not a commodity, but a sacred trust. The story of Sri Lanka's ancient irrigation is not just about engineering. It is about vision, about harmony with nature, about a civilization that understood how to live, not just survive. From the legends of Kumbhakarna to the works of Mahasen, Dhatusena, and Parakramabahu, this island's water legacy flows on. It is a gift from our past and a guide for our future. As an old Sinhala saying reminds us, Wewa, Dagabai, Gamai, Pansalai, the tank, the stupa, the village, and the temple. This was the order of life, and water was at the heart of it all.